right, so pretty much everybody in western Nebraska is well aware of how crooked it is. You get to hear from a lot of people who are trying to explain to me things I already know, things that I get called crazy when I say them. It's stupid, straight up. So, for me to talk about corruption in this town, it's a dangerous thing to do. These guys could try to warp, twist, and manipulate anything I say into a threat. Imagine that. Imagine making a video about how wrong it is to hurt people, and these people want to take it as a threat. They want to ignore everything. Meanwhile, for me, there's the fact that my disabilities only exist when it benefits Scott DeCosta. And even then, it's not even the disabilities that I have. It's the disabilities he wants to pretend that I have because he's crooked. Don't make no goddamn sense to anybody but, well, anybody who's friends with him, including Polly Olson and Leslie Snell. And of course, they work closely with the judges and the public pretenders. Well, we don't actually have public pretenders here. We have a court appointed attorney who acts as a public pretender, and he's subject to the same bullshit as a public pretender. Oh, we're not allowed to defend you. Are you fucking serious? And there's the fact that, of course, when you're falsely accused and falsely arrested, they take everything. You don't have any access to your goddamn evidence while you're locked up. This is one of the primary tools that they use to railroad homeless people and poor people. So then you end up taking a plea deal for something that you didn't even fucking do. And the public pretenders, well, they're not going to do their goddamn jobs. What they're going to do is try to convince you that you should take the plea deal. They're not going to bother with trying to get any of the evidence. They're going to say things like, well, we're not allowed to show anything that the cops didn't collect. Well, it's cops that I'm trying to turn in, dumbass. Does this not make sense to anybody else? So then they want to pretend like I'm schizophrenic, like I am imagining the evidence that I'm posting on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook. And then I've got people that I sent a whole bunch of evidence to that apparently never looked at it. Like, well, one of the situations was, and mind you, Meg wants to defend everybody that I'm yelling about, which I don't actually get. See, when people are playing stupid, it's pretty easy to tell that they're playing stupid. Now, calling people morons, I do that quite often. If I've said something 100 times and you still don't get it, I will probably call you a moron. That's because your comprehension of the English language is, well, complete and total shit. Judge Weimer, for example, his understanding of the English language is non existent. Now, what Leslie Snell had said in court, that is not against the law to say, but she's a pretty blonde white girl. So, of course, being as she also works in the courts, well, she gets special treatment and special privilege. And this happens often in the courts, where because that person is an officer or works for the sheriff's department, it's just assumed that they must be telling the truth. Meanwhile, all cops are trained in their 6-week courses in how to lie, how to assault, how to kill, and how to manipulate. This is all of their training. Holy shit. So, really, All of these people telling me I stand no chance, they're absolutely correct. And we also got to record that it really doesn't make any difference. A pretty, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl in western Nebraska sheds a couple crocodile tears because she doesn't want to go to fucking prison, and she automatically wins. Now, that makes it complicated for me to go down to the courthouse now, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the safety issues with the Dual County Sheriff's Department have not been addressed. And the issue with Marcia Estrada isn't that she's not a lawyer. I mean, obviously, there is a conflict of interest if I'm trying to turn in the Dual County Sheriff, and every time I try to turn in the sheriff for one of his deputies, I end up locked up on bogus bullshit, or I get sent to a fucking mental hospital and get drugs put in me. This is nationwide, folks. If you're a disabled homeless male, this is what you have to look forward to. Oh, yeah, and people telling you what they heard and then saying, I don't want to get involved. Well, you shouldn't have told me, motherfucker, because now you're a witness. If you're going to tell me something that is going to affect my decision making and affect my fear factor in this town, you need to come forward about that shit. But then again, why would they? They're afraid, which is the reason for recording everything. Now, of course, then there's times where I have recordings of people that I didn't even know I turned on my recording device. I fidget. So I've got recordings of things that I didn't even realize I had. Once I realized I had them, I went, well, it's a good thing I got that. But the person that I recorded is probably going to be pissed. Now, obviously, it is not against the law for me to speak out about corruption. But then again, a corrupt judge is not going to care. A corrupt sheriff in bed with a corrupt judge is not going to care. Now, here's another major issue. All of the officers in Dual County have taken part in this in the last 5 years. All of them. There is not a single Dual County officer that I have encountered that has not taken part in this. The threats or the harassment or the going out of their way to ignore crimes against me over and over again. Now, then there's the fact that for me to be able to put my case together to take these people to court, I need time to do it and I need a safe environment to work in. Now, me making video recordings is perfectly legal. Me turning in an audio recording or a video recording is perfectly legal. There are no laws against that. But then again, are they actually looking at it? Are they looking at the actual evidence? Now, here's the situation. Case in point, Marcia Estrada. Marcia Estrada hasn't gone through what I've sent her already. All right, this person over here, Taghi Hopkuji, it's a spammer. And what do we do with spammers? Something that we can't do in real life. When somebody like Robert Warnick comes to assault you, you don't get to hide user on this channel and not deal with it. Dual County Sheriff's Department sure as hell does, though, don't they? What do? They go out of their way to help my predators in this town get away with their crimes. That's not okay. And of course, the judges helped them too. They had no evidence against me, but yet they locked me up for 7 months, including sending me to the prisons, sending me to multiple facilities where I had previously been harmed. Scotts Bluff, they sent me there twice. Once before I was sent to prison, and once on the way back. That was just in that 7-month period. There's also the fact that when I was assaulted by Scott decoste, where was I sent? That's right, I was sent to Scotts Bluff. and I had previously been assaulted in Scottsbluff. This is what happens when you're a disabled and homeless male. Nobody gives a fuck about your rights. They don't have to observe your rights. And then there's the fact that the assault against me by Scott DeCosta and Deputy Lassen, sorry, not Deputy Lassen, Nebraska State Trooper Lassen, happened on December 16th of 2020. And I was sent to, of course, the Scottsbluff jail then, and it cost me money to bail myself out. And Stephanie Mejia, thank goodness she came down to help me. I was pretty well stuck there at the Capri Motel. Meanwhile, I got the names of the people from the Capri Motel written down in some of my paperwork because one of them was in jail with me. It was a tweaker motel. Now, there's a lot of the people that were involved in this that they just simply didn't follow through, or they realized it was going to be actual work and lost interest and decided they were going to go do drugs and alcohol and have sex and whatever else. They just simply don't have time. And then there's the fact that being incarcerated and having to bail myself out, the money that I had that I could have paid somebody to help me with, I no longer have that money to pay them. So they're depriving me of my resources by doing this bogus bullshit. Not fucking okay. And then there's the fact that they want to put drugs in me over and over and over again. That's their fucking solution. If we put these drugs in him and claim that he's schizophrenic, then lo and behold, his word means nothing and our word makes us God. And then every fucking judge in America's got a God complex. Here's something most of y'all don't want to pay attention to. Cops are trained to be liars. Yeah. Lawyers are trained to be liars. And all judges started off as lawyers. Then there's the fact that all of these asshats work together. They work together to deny you your rights as a human being. And then they want you to raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. What happened to separation of church and state? Who says I even believe in God? And are they going to allow me to tell the whole truth? Not in 15 minutes, they ain't. And then there's the safety issues involved with, yeah, I need someone to go in with me in person. Now, Mandy Singer was going to try to go in with me in person, but her family issues made it so that she couldn't. My little sister was going to go in with me, but she sends me a message that she's being followed by the fucking cops, and then somebody from Colorado is fucking threatening her. Definitely not cool. And of course, threatening harm against my niece. That also is not cool. At that point, yes, it's going on fucking YouTube. I am not going to keep my mouth shut about people threatening and harassing my loved ones. That's not gonna fucking happen. Now, whether or not Tara was telling the truth, I really don't know. I wasn't there for the dude who supposedly harassed her. I don't have any sort of description of the man. I don't know how she knows that he's from Colorado. But also, I wouldn't put it past the Bollingers and these fucking goddamn web wingnuts that these cops say they can't do anything about. They absolutely fucking can. They absolutely can. My sister telling me that she was threatened and now she's afraid. The guy that I've been staying with being threatened by Scott DeCosta and now he's afraid. Thank goodness I recorded that. I had to. I spoke with him about it several times. but I don't post it on the internet. I very well could. It would be very easy to do, and he definitely wouldn't be happy about it. Now, when I tell somebody that I'm not going to record them and I have a conversation with them, that conversation is not recorded. I feel that is a fair way to deal with a person. Like when I talked to Dennis Dickinson about the bullshit over there, I told him, hey, I'm not going to record this conversation. And I didn't. When I spoke to Rick Martindale, I told him I would not record that conversation, and I didn't. And with Chris Stegeman, I had a conversation with him. I even let him hold my recording device while we had the conversation. I showed Rick Martindale my recording device so he knows what it looks like. Speaking out about corruption is not a crime, but these people want to pretend that it is. Protesting is not a crime, but they want to pretend that it is. The fact that I speak out here on YouTube and people want to pretend like I'm stalking them because I'm speaking out on YouTube, that's a big issue. Also, there's people like William Barr who want to pretend that I'm threatening his family, that I'm making open ended threats. No, 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 no. I don't leave my threats open ended. If I tell you, hey, if you give out my number, I'm going to give out yours, that's not open ended. I've told you exactly what I'm going to do. Now, obviously, the judge in this situation doesn't give a holy goddamn about the evidence or the safety issues that prevent me from even going to court. And then there's the fact that the cops knocking on my goddamn door, that was absolutely not necessary. What was that? That was retaliation. And who is it that was retaliating? That would be the Christian feller who said that he would go in with me to talk to the cops. That's right. So, what is it that was considered harassment? What is it that I did that was supposedly against the law? I didn't break the law. I made sure that I used my brain and didn't threaten these people with anything that is illegal. When it comes to threatening to take someone to court, that is not against the law. But they're doing everything that they can to prevent me from taking these people to court and to drag it out so the statute of limitations is over. Then there's the situation with Investigator Woods and the situation with Sergeant Jones, where they are wishy-washy, wishy-washy, wishy. Don't fucking do that. That is showing me that you're not going to do your job. And then there's a situation with Marcia Estrada. I sent her all of the evidence that she needed in order to turn in the crimes against me. Not all of them, obviously. I didn't send her even a tiny fraction of what I had, but I didn't want to overwhelm her. And then she only sees a small part of it. She hasn't seen it all, and by her own admission, and yes, I've recorded this, by her own admission, she hasn't seen it all. If they're going to tell me one thing and then do another, or they're going to tell me something is not illegal, and then they're going to take me to court over something that I do that is exactly the same thing, big issue there. Now, obviously, many of these people who are on the internet, who saw these web sleuth groups and saw the news, they're not going to forget that in Chapel, Nebraska. Here in Chapel, Nebraska, people made fun of me for years for being a weirdo. But who is the weirdo that they went to when they needed help? That's right, me. because their best friends in the whole world wouldn't show up to help them move out of their fucking husband's house. When speaking out about corruption, speaking out about public officials, it's a big issue and they don't like it. They have the power to get away with these things, and at least I show it. Now, with me having to move my papers all the damn time, I'm organizing it, and then I have to stuff it all into bags. And then when I get to the next place, I have to pull it out and reorganize it. When you've moved a whole bunch, it ends up getting extremely unorganized. And then there's the fact that when you're going through it to try to organize it and you're trying to find the stuff that you need in specific, well, you've got it out surrounding you, and then it's time for you to go. You don't have time to do all this stuff. By the time I got to that hotel room there and I started pulling out everything and trying to get all of it put together, I didn't have any way to send it to the courts. And of course, Joanne, that's the county or the clerk of the courts, she tells me I don't need to turn that in. I don't turn that in. I present that at court. But how can I present it at court when the courts are not observing the safety issues with Dual County Sheriff's Department? And then there's the wishy-washy bullshit. Damn. I suppose in this video I should probably post links to the videos that show all of that. That way people who actually care can go through and watch those videos. The fact that people are dead because these guys are fucking idiots who didn't want to do their fucking job because they're lazy really does say something about the situation in western Nebraska. You might as well throw on your Nazi uniform and wave your swastika, because that is basically what the Nebraska flag is at this point. It's a giant goddamn swastika. The courts don't care about evidence. The sheriff doesn't care. Well, actually, the sheriff does care about evidence. When it came to me trying to go organize it and work with Meg, my autism advocate, to get it all put together and try to rush it together in a week, that's all I had at that motel there. 1 week. And I didn't even get the full week. I had 2 days there before their trumped up bullshit came and prevented me from having that safe and quiet environment, while Meg, my autism advocate, was able to spend the time to actually help me with that. And she couldn't spend a lot of time with it. She was telling me between making the call to, God, what's her name? Sergeant Jones, or getting a hold of these 3 other places that we need to get a hold of and try to actually get my developmental disability paperwork. That developmental disability paperwork is important because when I am overwhelmed, I shut down. When I have a panic attack, it could take days for me to recover from it. I did not have that problem prior to Natalie Bollinger, by the way. I had issues, but that wasn't one of them. That was a new thing that was brought on by years of stress, years of abuse by the police. And if you don't care, you don't care, and they get away with it. They get away with it. Why? Because you don't care. When somebody is unpopular and then they're slandered the way that I was by the news and made out to be some sort of fucking horrible monster, and these people in chapel want to pretend that I'm some sort of a horrible monster, the sheriff definitely doesn't want to fucking pay attention to the law. He wants to get reelected. And although Scott DeCosta did not commit any crimes against me prior to Natalie Bollinger's death, he committed many afterwards. And when you're not popular in a town like this, people don't want to go in with you. After the situation with Natalie Bollinger and everything that was on the news and all these web sleuth groups taking things out of context to paint me as a monster, well, we've also got the issue of, well, judges, are they appointed or are they elected? Look it up. Matter of fact, let's not look it up. We'll go right here and we will go, are judges, there it is, are judges elected? Supreme Court justices, Court of Appeals judges, and district court judges are nominated by the President and confirmed by the United States Senate, as stated in the Constitution. So they're appointed by popularity. Their appointment reflects upon the person who appointed them. So let's say, for example, let's say that Donald Trump was to try to have somebody from the state of Colorado who's got a history of sexual abuse against people. That would reflect on the president. Of course, when the president's a child molester himself and goes out to, well, the sex ranches where they have sex with little kids, and then we elect this guy as president, and not just him. I mean, we've had, 3 presidents so far that have been connected to that child molesting POS? Does anybody remember that child molesting POS's name, or did the COVID thing make you forget? Now, when it comes to Mr. Epstein, that Maxine lady is kind of putting it back in our field of vision, putting it back in our scope. Of course, how much is it in our scope and how much is it distracting us from the things that are going on locally? How much is it allowing people to get away with these crimes? There's a reason that judges don't want stuff recorded in the courtroom. When they break the law, they don't want it recorded. They don't want to be held accountable. When they help out their friends like Leslie Snell and Scott DeCosta, they don't want to get in trouble for it. But then again, it's Western Nebraska. Who's going to stop them? Who is going to have the intestinal fortitude to stand up to them? And who's going to be a coward and say, I don't want to get involved? Right? Now, a lot of people say, you need to stand up and be a man. Well, by that measure there, I'm the only man in town. For about 3 weeks, Chapel, Nebraska was a population of entirely women. But I'm back. You're welcome. Now, is that an insult? Of course it is. Of course that is an insult. Now, why is it that calling someone a woman is an insult? Well, it's only an insult if you say that to a man. Whereas if you tell a woman that she's manly, well, that depends on what context you're using it in. With Desiree, she'll beat your ass like a man will. That's Desiree. And she takes that as a compliment. But if you say she's burly, butch, and manly, she's not going to take that as a compliment. So it all depends. Now, a lot of people want to do the whole name calling thing towards me. Like I'm being a pussy and I'm being a coward and I'm being this, that, and the other. I'm the only one standing up to these people. So, really, how much of a coward can I really be? If standing up to these people is what makes me a man, then there are a lot of women who are actually men. If standing up to corruption makes you a real man, then a woman standing up to corruption is a real man by that definition, is she not? So why don't we just change it? Instead of saying a real man or a real woman, say a real human being, a real person. Are you going to be real, or are you going to hide and cower in the corner? When you are threatened, harassed, or intimidated, are you going to just take it? If you're a parent in this town, you have to. And that's the point with the guy who owns this house. He is a parent, and Scott DeCosta threatened him with CPS. Not okay. With them trying to paint me as some sort of a monster and going, oh, well, you have dangerous people around you. Really? Dangerous people around those kids? Most of these parents are more dangerous to these children than I have ever been capable of being towards anyone. If you're drinking and driving, yeah, that's putting the kids at risk. I don't drink, so I can't put the kids at risk by doing that. I don't drive the kids anywhere, so I can't put the kids at risk by doing that. I don't beat on people. I don't smack them around. Hell, I don't even yell at kids. There's no reason to. Now, in the situation at Rand Ingersoll's, oh, hell yes, I yelled at them. My God, yes, I did. With them running off in that trailer park in Rawlins, Wyoming, anything could have happened. Anybody could have picked them up and just driven off with them. And how would we be able to find out who it was that in specific did that? We wouldn't be able to. They'd be on missing persons posters. And you know how I feel about missing persons posters. That's one of the issues with Rand Ingersoll's constant and incessant drinking, is that she did not have the mental capacity to take care of those kids. I was basically taking care of 3 children, both of Amy Kingery's kids and Rihanna. Meanwhile, Rihanna wants to watch this Bates Motel thing the whole time. Like she's getting drunk and watching the Bates Motel. And that's not something that I am comfortable listening to or watching or anything of that nature. It's creepy stuff about killing. And you know how I feel about killing. Killing is wrong. Killing does not achieve anything positive at all. Now, these friends of the Bollingers that the Bollingers were egging on and egging up and trying to get all up in a tiffy to threaten my life, and the Bollingers don't take any responsibility for this. None whatsoever. They want to pretend that they're prim and proper and good Christian folks. And that right there, that works here in chapel. If you pretend that you're Christian, my God, they love you. You go to church every week and say, praise the Almighty and all that other bullshit. Yeah, they might help you. But that's not real. Whether or not God is real, that's not a debate. That's not a debate for me to have. I believe in science, and science cannot confirm the existence of God, but science also cannot deny the existence of God. So that's not something I'm going to debate. I debate facts. If you want to argue with me about your numbers of incarceration, the numbers for incarceration are based on bias, as shown in my court date the other day. Now, then we have polls. Now, the poll statistics are quite a bit different. When these polls are taken, and polls are taken nationwide in the United States by many different institutions and many different colleges, especially when it comes to the study of human behavior. When they ask a group of women if they ever engaged in a particular behavior, and they ask men, have you ever engaged in particular behavior? Well, women admit to far more behaviors that are stalker behaviors, but it doesn't register to them that it's a stalker behavior. Why is that? It's because we have trained that sexism into our society. Now, of course, we've got the situation where Leslie Snell, being a pretty blonde haired, blue eyed white girl, well, if she says something, it must be true. Everyone in town is expected to believe it. She works for the sheriff, so she must be above the law. She's not. Neither is the judge. The judge is not above the law. Now, with Mandy Singer, with her not being able to show up in court, I can't hate her for that. I can't judge her as a horrible person for that. Her issues are legit. Her getting sick is legitimate. Her having physical issues are legitimate. For her to have back issues that are so severe that she can barely walk, that is a legitimate problem. That is a legitimate issue. So she was unable to fulfill her end of the renegotiated bargain. See, that's the thing, is that we had to renegotiate everything when I got there. We weren't expecting for this protection order crap. We were not expecting that at all. I had to stay in the house here, scared of the fucking cops pulling more illegal bullshit and abusing their power again. So I stayed here for what, 3, 4 days without going anywhere, having to slip out to go to Pumpkin Pantry when I thought, well, this might be a good time where I'm not likely to run into one of my predators. And then, of course, Wendell McPhee was going to help me out with that situation. And I recorded that as well. That's the great thing about recording everything. If you record everything, you have evidence of everything, but then you also, because you recorded everything, you have a lot of stuff to go through. And then there's the fact that it really doesn't matter if you have the evidence because Judge Weimer isn't going to look at it. Obviously, the county prosecutor, being as he has helped to cover up for the crimes of the Dual County Sheriff's Department, obviously he doesn't want to look at it. He's just going to assume that this is going to give him an easy out. This is Western Nebraska politics and courts for you people. Now, there's the tactics that William Barr wanted to use, telling me not to talk to him or his friends or his family. He can't do that. He cannot tell me that I can't talk to Rick Martindale. Rick Martindale, I wasn't talking to him because of what William Barr had said to me about Rick Martindale. And it was very strange to me that Rick Martindale, me being angry at him about the things that he had supposedly said according to William Barr, that Rick Martindale was coming across the street to talk to me, that he was coming to Pump and Pantry when I was in there and he was talking to me, that Rick Martindale was inviting me to his house. And of course, since Rick Martindale was talking to me, I did consider that an apology. I considered it close enough. But an apology for what? When I went over and talked to Rick Martindale about the situation, Rick didn't know anything about it. William Barr told me in specific that Rick Martindale, this is first of all, he told me that the reason that Justine did not keep her word to me to help me with that developmental disability paperwork, he said that the reason that she didn't keep her word on that is because her family had told her not to. Later on, he stated in specific that Rick Martindale had told her not to. So when I asked Rick, and Rick said she didn't know nothing about it, yeah, that shows motive for William Barr to pull his bullshit. And of course, I have to mind my P's and Q's, try to make sure that the words that come out of my mouth, it doesn't matter at this point, does it? It doesn't matter what I say, they're going to try to twist it into a threat, ain't they? You goddamn right they will. Anything they can do to prevent me from showing evidence in court. The safety issue with Scott DeCosta has been ongoing since 2018. Nebraska State Patrol making me turn in crimes to Scott DeCosta or his crooked ass deputies is against the law. It is against the law for me to make, or for them to make me go to that man or his deputies to turn in these crimes. But I have to. I have to turn in these crimes. Without help, basically, I need a blonde haired, blue eyed, pretty white girl on my side, or I'm not going to get heard. Are there any blonde haired, blue eyed, pretty white girls in western Nebraska who are willing to volunteer to help me with this? Obviously, I don't have blonde hair. I don't have blue eyes. I'm not pretty. And obviously, I'm not a girl. I am white. That's about the only thing I really have going for me, right? Well, no, I don't have that going for me. That is a negative in the current political climate. Being white is a negative in this climate because who do I have to go to for help as a white person? BLM isn't going to give a shit about me. They're not going to speak up about the crimes that were committed against me. Now, it is going to take an act of fucking Congress for me to get body cameras without help. And Congress, they're not going to listen to me. So, how do we get that act of Congress? We appeal to the American public and show them the truth and hope people actually give a shit. I personally believe that BLM, the movement, not the organization, BLM, the movement, is harmful to all of us. The movement itself has become a racist entity. Now, BLM, the organization, their biggest issue is that they're not working together with all of the victims. See, BLM, the organization, wants to push bullshit rhetoric claiming that black people are the most. Let me see if I can look this up. I want to make sure that I state it correctly. Black Americans are diverse. This group consists of people with varied racial and ethnic identities and experiences, very much so. Most black folks in America do have European bloodlines in, and that's because of the whole slavery situation and the fact that it was popular for travelers who were going through to rent a slave for the night, and that was very prevalent. And then there's the fact that afterwards there were a lot of interracial couples, and interracial couples were not so popular in the 1950s, 60s, or 70s. In the 80s, it was starting to become pretty standard. In the 90s, we had a big movement from African Americans. That's what the term that we were supposed to use in the 90s was, is African Americans. A lot of African Americans were complaining that African American males were dating so many white girls. And we also had racial interest groups like the KKK who were also against that. And that really created a giant boom of hatred towards people who are of mixed background. Now, according to the, God, I'm not finding it, marginalized, that's what it is. The claim by BLM, the organization, that black people are the most marginalized people in the country. They're not. They're absolutely not. And then there's the idea that black people are victimized and killed by police more than any other group. Not even close. Per capita, the homeless are number one. Number one on every single list. Number one. Now, that's something that needs to be paid attention to. In 2019, 49% of those killed by police were homeless out of a population of only 500,000. 51% of those killed by police in 2019 were disabled out of a population of 60 million. That's 120 times the population, or 120 times the population size of the homeless population. So if you do the math, the reality is per capita, if the homeless had a population of 60 million and the police killed the homeless at the same rate per capita, 99% of those killed by police would be homeless. There's also the fact that the murder of homelessness is, or the murder of homeless people is on the rise. It's over 60% higher than it was in 2020. In 2021, 60% more homeless people were murdered by police. There's also the fact that there's an even higher number of homeless people that were killed last year, over the year before, by other people or unsolved. And are they really going to invest the time and energy into finding out who it is that murdered a homeless person? No, nobody fucking cares. That's the reason that I fight so hard for MMIW. The United States doesn't care about indigenous women at all. Because it says women, there are some people in the United States who are going to care more than otherwise they would. And this all comes down to political corruption and who it is that the judge sees or deems human. Now, Dan Faber, with the conversation with him, he did point that out as well. Now, this isn't just an opinion, it is verified by facts, numbers, and statistics. Kind of like when I say statistically, when a child is raped, or molested, it's the dad. Statistically, that is true. Does that mean that every single child that is molested or raped was molested or raped by their dad? No, it doesn't. In 80% of the cases, it's one of the parents. Now, that needs to be paid attention to because there are a lot of boys and girls who are molested by women, by their mothers in specific. But you don't want to hear that. That doesn't meet your feminist criteria, does it? No, that's not feminism. Feminism is fighting for equal rights. That's sexism. See, that's the thing that you're not getting. There is a difference between fighting for equal pay and being sexist towards anything with a penis. Uh, Dude, there's nothing out there. I don't know why you keep staring out the window like a fucking tweaker. I get it. I'll take you out in a minute. Downstairs. 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 He's really got to go to the bathroom, I'm sure. I'm going to finish this video. No. Oh, he wants my sandwich. You've already been out. I'll take you out again. Okay, bud? Downstairs. See, I'm gone for 3 weeks, and now he doesn't want to listen to me. All right, so where were we? Oh, yes, the current political climate and sexism in the courts, in the police force, it's prevalent. It is extremely prevalent. And then there are a lot of resources because women are so marginalized that there are a lot of resources to help women where those resources are not there for men. Where most of these organizations only care about women, even if it's supposed to be a co-ed service. Now, when we had that conversation with Mandy Singer, she spoke about co-ed services that Joseph was not allowed into. Co-ed services. She didn't even touch on the topic of the female-only services. And many of those, you can't get those either if you're a woman. You end up spending more resources to get that help than you ever get out of it. How much time and gas and energy and wear and tear on my vehicle does it take for me to go from Chapel, Nebraska to my appointment in Sydney and back? Quite a bit. We're talking about an hour of driving, 2 hours there, plus the cost of gas and wear and the tear on the vehicle. It's a lot. Now, Victoria had a daughter, and even then, these services in Colorado, they wanted her to stay at those services. They wanted her to go there and hang out and fill out paperwork over and over again. In order for her to have access to the food bank down there, she had to go to 4 meetings a month. Otherwise, she's not eligible for that food. If she drives to 3 of those meetings, she has to use her gas to keep herself warm at night in the winter. So, yeah, she's using gas. And then she's got to drive to services that are many miles from the safest place for her to park and not get messed with by the cops. And then she's got to drive to all these meetings, and then she can go to the food pantry 1 day a month. And she has to get non-perishables and canned goods because she's living in a car. Now, if she's using her heater, that food is going to spoil, it's going to rot, it's going to stink. So either she doesn't use her heater and conserves that gas and freezes. Of course, the food will be fine, but she won't be. And these are all things that are common sense, but they're things that most of you have never had to deal with, never had to live through. So it doesn't even occur to you when you are formulating your opinions of how other people should be living. Juliana Myers typed, "Hey Sean, just caught you. Hi pup." I am a pup, aren't I? I'm a good dog. Or a bad dog, depending on your opinion. Now let's talk about William Barr for a minute. Let's talk about the crimes that he committed and the manipulation that he pulled. Why is he not a Denver police officer anymore? Or, sorry, a Denver County Sheriff's Department deputy? Why is he not? No, dude, it's not your. Oh my God, dude, you're fucking slobbering your ball licking nastiness on my fucking drink, dude. You were just licking your asshole like 10 minutes ago. That's fucking gross. Yeah, still tastes like a Java Monster. Yeah, that's how I can tell that he wants the food. It's the drool. If he had to go to the bathroom, he'd be acting differently. Don't be a douche. Now, with William Barr, he also wanted to antagonize me in his texting by insinuating that I would hurt his family, that I had made threats against his family. And I stated loud and clear that the Martindales are all safe. I'm not trying to take legal action against the Martindales. Rick Martindale cleared that up. I still need him to testify in court. But then there's the fact that that probably would not fly too well with Jessica Martindale. That's Rick's daughter. Sorry, Jessica Barr, because she got married to William. But what did Jessica do wrong in this situation? Nothing. She didn't do anything wrong. She didn't do anything to me. She didn't lie to me. She didn't make false accusations. She didn't try pretending like I would hurt her kids. And that's where all of these people get along just fine. I don't mean the Martindales, I mean people like Leslie Snell and Robert Warnick and William Barr. They want to hide behind their children, pretend that I would harm their children in order to manipulate the courts. I'm still waiting to see any threats against anyone's children ever in my entire life. There are none. There's none. But of course, like I said, it's their word versus mine. And no judge is going to listen to me in western Nebraska. Now, there's lots of people in town who have come up to me and told me about this person said this and this person said that. And you should probably leave town and so on and so forth because such and such is after you. Now, especially right at the beginning after Natalie was killed. And of course, I didn't have the ability to record every goddamn thing on the one phone. I could have recorded it on the computer, but am I going to walk around with the computer open as I'm walking through town? I actually thought about it. I thought about carrying my computer around and having it on so that if people saw me, they would know better than to throw beer bottles at me or threaten to fucking kill me because it would be recorded. Now, recording the evidence is only a part of it. It's also the fact that I need to be able to get it to the courts. I need to be able to get it to the Nebraska State Patrol without them ignoring it or looking away from it. Now, with Meg, who is my autism advocate, there's a lot of stuff that she hasn't seen. There's a lot of stuff that me telling her, well, if I tell her something and she hasn't seen it, it's just retelling her. With the sheer quantity of evidence that I got to dig out in order to send it to her, and also the fact that she said that it would take 4 months for somebody to go through all of that paperwork. So obviously she's not able to make the time to go read through all of and that's just the paperwork that I had before they sent me to prison. I have a lot more now. And over and over and over again, the statements that they have made have been slanderous. Meanwhile, that slander is allowed in court. How is that okay? Walter, stay out of that. You have food. All right, I should probably go make sure his dog bowl's got food in it. It was pretty low earlier this morning, and now he's being a dick. Stop drooling on me. Oh. So, of course, William Barr wanted to leave out important information, and so did Scott decoste. Important information like the last message that I sent to Will was not a threat against his life. It wasn't a threat against anybody in his family or his extended family. I'm not after anyone except for the predators, and I am only after them in court. When it comes to the blue line of bullshit or the blue line of silence, we've got fear based tactics that are being taught to law enforcement. Fear based. So let's look this up. We'll post a link. Fear based police law enforcement training. All right, here's one. The police trainer who teaches cops to kill, the New Yorker. I suppose we could post that one. I haven't watched it, I haven't read it, so I don't know what's actually in this one. We'll also go to my Facebook because there's one on here that also shows those fear based tactics. Me speaking out about corruption is not illegal. And as a result, I speak out about corruption. And this is very clear corruption. Let's see. The one that I'm looking for, the reason I'm looking for it is because, here it was. All right.
Monday.com.
We don't want that advertisement. Well, actually,
this may be the craziest story I've seen yet, but the truth is, I'm really not surprised that it happened. A sheriff's deputy shot and killed an off-duty police officer at his own home, right after that officer had been stabbed multiple times by an armed robber. That's right, the off-duty police officer was the victim of a violent attack. While that attack did not kill him, on-duty police arrived minutes afterwards and finished the job. I cannot say this enough times. There is no human situation so bad that it cannot be made worse by the presence of a police officer. I've got to wonder, if you're a cop that gets murdered by another cop, does your family still back the blue? Or do you start to realize that there is something seriously wrong in law enforcement? The incident occurred on January 30th, 2022, starting around 8:15 p.m. in Clark County, Washington. Police say they received a call around 8:15 p.m. Call stated that a man in his 20s pointed a gun at a clerk, demanded money, and then fled with several $100s. Police say they caught up with the suspect 12 minutes later on Interstate 205, but when they attempted to initiate a stop, the suspect fled. Police used spike strips, successfully disabling the vehicle, after which the man jumped out and ran into a nearby neighborhood. He successfully evaded police, but moments later, another 911 call came in from a woman claiming that a man was knocking on her door saying that he was in an accident and needs help. The female caller then informed dispatch that her husband was an armed, off-duty Vancouver police officer and that he was now outside of the house attempting to detain the suspect. There was an altercation between the suspect and the off-duty police officer slash homeowner, in which the off-duty officer lost control of his firearm and was then stabbed multiple times. The off-duty officer was injured but not critically until sheriff's deputies arrived on scene, opening fire and killing him. Who are you going to call next time somebody tries to break into your house? The victim is 52-year-old Donald Sahota. How sad is it to be brutally beaten and stabbed at your own home, only for the guys who are supposed to show up and help to show up and finish you off? But this is a perfect example of why it's just plain not rational to call the police to help when a violent individual is at your home. First, whatever that individual is going to do to you, he's going to do and be gone before the police ever arrive. If you aren't prepared to defend yourself, you're already screwed. 2. When you do call the police and they arrive, they don't know who does and does not belong at your home. Every single person at your home runs the risk of having a gun pointed in their face and being treated like a suspect. That means you, your wife, your children, your grandchildren, your elderly mother. And it makes perfect sense. These guys don't know you. They don't know who does and doesn't belong in your house. And officer safety is number 1 to them. They don't care how traumatizing this is going to be to you, your family, your children. All they care about is that they get to go home to their family. This is how police have been trained. Forget the law, forget people's rights, forget about what's right and wrong. Forget about what your conscience tells you. Officer safety is number 1. I believe that the officer safety, fear-based training is the reason for this cop-on-cop shooting, and I believe it will be the cause of more to come. Nobody is safe from this.
The absolute most important thing is officer safety. And so we really highlight that officer safety issue.
Do we allow people to point guns at us? No. We go home. Those that we're dealing with will go home if they choose to, right?
According to fear-based officer training, Donald Sahota chose to die that night.
Look in the mirror and ask yourself, can I kill a kid? Can I shoot a grandma? Can I shoot a mom? Can I shoot a dad? Can I shoot a brother? Because if you can't, it's not you that's going to get hurt, it's your partner.
The fear-based training that police receive is dangerous for anyone who crosses an on-duty police officer's path, including other police officers.
The notion still continues to be the
Now,
easiest.
I'm hoping that this stream actually recorded that. There's also many, many examples where individuals who went in alone to try to turn in an officer were denied even the paperwork to do so. Denied the paperwork to do so. For me, trying to get that paperwork was impossible. They wouldn't allow it. It was the threats, the harassment, the intimidation, the false arrests, and of course being sent to a nuthatch where they lied to the hospital, and that's a big major issue. Law enforcement that you are trying to turn in should not be present when you are trying to turn them in. It was not appropriate for those officers to be there. I needed Jen Beebe to be present so that I could turn in specific, officers Deputy Cody Selhorst and Deputy Jared Hahn. Now, with Nebraska, with these officers not being required to have their body cameras on, they can kill black people at will, but they can also kill homeless people at will. They can threaten, harass, and intimidate whoever they want at any point in time. Now, are they likely to do this to homeowners? Actually, yes. They do it frequently to homeowners. They don't want to be recorded. It is not illegal to record a government official anywhere in the United States, except in a courtroom. But if you're not in the courtroom, there's no laws against it. Loopholes, people. Loopholes. Now, we've got a lot of much larger issues here to combat. Like the fact that BLM, the organization, needs to get on board with the actual issue at hand, not special issues. It's already illegal to kill somebody. It's already illegal to falsely arrest somebody and falsely imprison somebody. But when you've got a small pool of victims, like BLM only focusing on the black victims and trying to push laws to make it so that it's more illegal to do these things to people of color, that still leaves the two primary victims completely ignored. Even BLM, the organization, is fine as long as there's somebody lower on the totem pole. Is BLM going to fight for homeless rights? No, and there are many black homeless people. Most of those who are falsely imprisoned and incarcerated who are black, most of them are homeless. Most of those murdered by police who are black are homeless. But who is it that BLM focuses on? It only focuses on those in houses. Now, we do have to separate BLM, the organization, from BLM, the movement. Because BLM, the movement, involves a lot of different people. And we have seen that many, many, many white people have stood up and joined the BLM movement. Many white people. Are they bad people for joining this movement? Absolutely not. But of course, this fear-based training is also very prevalent in black society. You have to be afraid of whitey. All white peoples are your enemies, and so on and so forth. And then we've got a bunch of black people who assume that any time that they are messed with, that it must be because of the color of their skin. Well, if police are doing this to the homeless and to the disabled at a much higher rate, obviously skin color has a lot less to do with it than what we are trying to sell. It is the assumption of poverty, the assumption that you will not have the money for an attorney, the assumption that your family doesn't have the money for an attorney. And of course, what makes the homeless so easy to victimize is that people assume that because you're homeless, your family doesn't care about you. You will not have anyone in your corner when you go to court. Nobody at all. People are not going to show up in court and speak up for you. Now, there were a lot of homeless people that were willing to come forward and were willing to speak up, but the police made zero effort to contact those people, even given the fact that they had those people's contact information. Even that was not good enough. Now, many years later, many of those people are dead. Many of them are dead. Some of them were killed. Some of them overdosed. But they're still dead and they cannot be contacted. Many of them, because when you're homeless, your phone is your lifeline. But when you get locked up and you have a prepaid phone, when you get back out, your prepaid phone number is gone. If you've got a phone that's full of evidence like me, you have to buy a brand new phone. You can't risk wiping all of the evidence off of your old phone. Of course, you're also homeless and you're prone to being stolen from. The police will steal your things. Case in point, Rawlins, Wyoming. I told them that there was evidence of child abuse in that vehicle and evidence of police misconduct. So they arrested me. And if you look at that situation, that officer, when he called me, was extremely hostile toward me. Extremely hostile. And you listen to the conversations with Rayanne Ingersoll, it doesn't take a genius to realize that Rayanne Ingersoll lied because she was angry. And we have taught American women to do this. When they're angry, it's okay for them to lie. It's okay for them to stalk people. They're not going to get in any trouble for it. It is socially acceptable. And even though the law says that it's illegal for them to do that, who's going to enforce it? Body cameras are essential. Making it more illegal for cops to do this does not enforce it. Also, when a police officer is involved in a misconduct situation, they need to erase the statute of limitations on that. And here is the reason. Because it is too easy for law enforcement that you are trying to turn in, case in point, Scott decoste and all of his deputies. It is too easy for them to manufacture a lie and have you incarcerated for something that never happened to prevent you from turning it in, to eat up your time. And the fact that Nebraska State Patrol took part in this just shows that bias even further. The fact that the FBI took part in this enhances it even further. And yes, the FBI did take part in it. When Peaches, or Kayla Trujillo, was going to go in with me to talk to law enforcement and try to turn in the crimes against me, that's what they claimed that they were going to do. When I got there, they wouldn't focus on that at all. They made sure that those officers that were supposed to do that were last in line. The reason for that is because they were violating my rights as a human being. They had already planned and initiated having an arrest against me to prevent me from turning in those officers. Meanwhile, one of the officers, the officer literally who was assigned to investigate the crimes against me, was Amanda Jonas, one of the officers who initiated those crimes against me. Yes, it is extremely complicated, and that is one of the things that these guys prey on. See, a lawyer wants to pick up an easy open and shut case, and even then, it's not an easy open and shut case because he's battling against corrupt law enforcement, corrupt judges, and corrupt public officials. So in order to turn these people in, although they conspired to prevent me from having my rights observed, I don't get to turn them in. In order to turn in the judge, I have to go to the Nebraska Bar Association. In order to turn in the public pretender, I have to go to the Nebraska Bar Association. In order to turn in Scott decoste, I have to go to the Nebraska Attorney General's office, who isn't going to do shit about it and hasn't done shit about it. And then I have to go to the county prosecutor, who's not going to do shit about it. And then, of course, to turn in the county prosecutor, I have to go to the Bar Association. And in order to turn in the sheriff's department, the Nebraska Attorney General's office says to turn it into Nebraska State Patrol, who twiddles their thumbs and plays stupid for years until the evidence is gone. These are common police tactics. Whether you're in a house or not, if they've got your number, they've got your number. And the moment you try to turn in one of them blue assholes on the blue line of bullshit, where did that bullshit come from? It plopped right out of those assholes. They've got the Police Officers Association, and they've got the Police Officers Union, and these are organizations that have on-site lawyers, on-staff lawyers, who will show up at a moment's notice. The moment you've got a police officer who decides that he's going to murder a homeless person, if somebody does speak up, they've got lawyers who are there, Johnny on the spot. Lawyers who specifically work in these situations and work with law enforcement officers who are trained to murder people. And when you're a poor person, obviously you don't have the money for a lawyer, something they prey on heavily. Now, me posting this stuff on the internet allows them prior knowledge of the fact that I'm trying to turn them in. The fact that they had prior knowledge that I was attempting to turn them in and that I had the evidence against them, and then they lied and manipulated and twisted the truth. And see, that's what they did in court yesterday. The judge knew that what I had said was not illegal. It's not against the law, not even a little bit. So at the very end of it, he twisted and manipulated the words into a threat. Obviously, those are not the words that I used. And very specifically, not in that order. And very specifically, he allowed it out of context. But in order to make it legal He had to twist the words into words that were not used. The judge himself broke the law to cover for Leslie Snell for something that was not against the law. And he was saying through it, I've already ruled on it. You guys ruled on it. Really? They ruled on it before court ever started. They refused to address the safety issues. Now, with all of these people who are telling me that they have been threatened, harassed, and intimidated by police and others, it is very much okay for me to speak out about it. When it comes to corruption, not just in Nebraska, but nationwide, we all need to work together, whether it's Native Americans, white people, black people, we all need to work together to end the corruption. When it comes to police violence against United States citizens, we need to address the police violence and enforcing the laws that make it illegal for them to do these things. Without enforcement, and they know that there's no enforcement, they will break the law. They will abuse their power. And that is part of the reason and the importance of having someone there in person. Whether you're doing it online or you have to actually go into the courthouse, the fact is that you have to have that system of checks and balances in place. When you record it, you have access to that recording. When you record it live on YouTube, everyone has access to that. When you have to wait until you get out of prison months later to post it on the internet to show the laws that they committed, they're already at the end of your ability to turn them in. And then you have to go to other organizations who are going to cover for their people. Anytime a law enforcement organization tells you to turn it into them, that gives them a heads up and allows them to hide or destroy evidence or to manufacture crimes against you. Case in point, every single officer I've tried to turn in. It was not acceptable for Scott DeCoste to investigate himself, and it was inappropriate for Nebraska State Patrol to tell me that I had to go to Scott DeCoste to turn in Scott DeCoste. It was inappropriate for Amanda Jonas to be assigned to my case when she's one of the officers I was trying to turn in. It was inappropriate when I was trying to turn in Officer Schneider in Tacoma, Washington. It was inappropriate for them to send me to Schneider instead of their internal investigations unit or professional standards unit, as they call it in Colorado. That's not okay. And then there's this fear-based training. Officers can pretend that they're afraid of you and literally kill you. Leslie Snell and Clint Snell can pretend like they're afraid of me and literally shoot me in the street, and the judge will let them get away with it. How messed up is that? Now, this is not a life that is worth living, being treated that way. Having the people who helped me threatened, harassed, and intimidated. That is not acceptable. Those things need to be turned in, but who do I turn it into without a pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl to assist me? Mandy Singer is petrified. She is scared shitless of going in with me because she doesn't want to be targeted. She is scared shitless that she'll lose her housing if the police show up at her door. The police know this. So let's hope they don't show up at her door to harass her. It was illegal for them to intimidate Candace Bondurant, but they did it anyway. The abuse that I had to go through because Candace was not willing to come forward about that resulted in a lot of people who were trying to help me being cut off from helping me. She slandered the shit out of me. Now, albeit those are my words, so it's not actually slander, but it was used out of context. So, in using it out of context, that's framing me, and that is also against the law. Now, with them denying my disabilities when it's in their favor to do so, and acknowledging my disabilities when it's in their favor, and manufacturing disabilities when that will prevent me from being heard, or claiming that I am a drug dealer or a drug user in order to justify their crimes. This is something that all of these people have done. Meanwhile, the hospitals don't take a drug test. Why aren't they taking a drug test? Why aren't they giving me a UA? Why are they just writing down whatever the cops say as if it was the truth? And every time the cops do this, it deprives me of my resources. It deprives me of my phone number. So I have to get a new phone number. And that's something that William Barr wanted to pretend like I was making all of these new phone numbers to harass him from different numbers. No. On the first phones that I called him from, I was of the mistaken belief that he was my friend. He wasn't my friend, he was manipulating me. That is exactly what he was doing. And with many of these people who were supposedly my friends, who didn't keep their word, who were wasting my time and my resources, when I recorded them later on saying those things and proving that those things were true, they wanted to be hateful towards me, as if I had stabbed them in the back, as if I had thrown them under the bus. No, I told the truth. They threw me under the bus. And, of course, they did pay the consequences. Now, those consequences weren't threats against their life. Those consequences were me recording our phone calls and posting them on YouTube. Now, obviously, they have been manipulating the courts and manipulating the laws and abusing them and taking them out of context, reinterpreting them however they see fit to harm an innocent man. But somehow magically it's okay because of my genitalia. That's one of the things that I have an issue with modern feminism. It's not feminism, it's sexism. There are 29 million men and boys in the United States who are molested before the age of 18. 29 million. That's a pretty significant number. That's a lot of victims. A lot of victims that sexist feminists want to blame for the crimes of other men. Your predator has a name, and I name my predators. I tell you their names, and it is my right to do so. Being denied those rights repeatedly and being denied the rights of an intelligent human being and an American citizen, as well as being denied the rights of a disabled American citizen. These are two very major issues. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how the law is actually written, is that those rights overlap. But in reality, they're doing this. They're denying me those rights due to poverty. And this is entirely a poverty-based system. If you are too broke to afford a real lawyer, you get railroaded, plain and simple. If you are homeless, it is assumed that nobody cares. In reality, most of those other homeless people have seen and are well aware of the consequences if they try to step forward and speak up. They know that they will be victimized. They will be assaulted. they will be arrested on bogus charges. Now, there's enough evidence on here to show all of that, to show a repeated pattern of police behavior across the country of doing these things when you try to turn them in. Now, with Scott DeCosta, the assault by Scott DeCosta will be on their body cameras. But when Nebraska State Patrol is bitty that all, folks, to me when it comes to going back and forth over whether or not they're able to investigate it, yes, obviously, they're not going to investigate it. Obviously, I need someone in person to help me with it. With Mandy Singer, she wasn't expecting me to show up with all of this stuff in a rush fashion, days late, when she's got all of these family things that she had planned and doctor's appointments and many other things about her physical and mental conditions. That's the thing about trauma. It's lifelong. It doesn't just disappear because you want it to. Oh my God, I gotta stand up. My back is hurting. When it comes to our rights, these are our rights. We the people means we. So if you are allowing law enforcement to do this to other people, you are not a part of we, you're a selfish individual. I don't agree with most of the stuff, most of the rhetoric being spouted by BLM. But I do acknowledge the fact that police are doing these things to black people. They are also doing them to white people. They're doing them to Jewish people. They're doing them to Christian people. They're doing them to atheists. They're doing them to many people. All right, Vic Vega wants to type, "You're mad at Leslie Snell over your own ridiculous behavior." He also types, "She did nothing wrong. Judge did nothing wrong. Enjoy your ignorant, self-obsessed drama." And see, that right there shows the bias. This shows the bias by which these people are allowed to get away with it. You make baseless assumptions that have nothing to do with reality. But we've got a magic trick here that we can use when we're on the internet. What's that magic trick? Well, for starters, we pull our magic little telephone device and we take a picture. Now, how are these people able to get away with these things? Why is it that law enforcement doesn't want to investigate this stuff? Because most of these are bogus accounts. Let's make sure that actually, all right, perfect. And then there he goes. He wants to call me an asshole who doesn't listen. Well, let's take a picture of that as well before we do what it is that we always do to these guys. What do? We go over to the right-hand side, and we'll click show it for those of you who are watching other than him. We go over to the side, and we click the three dots, and we go hide user on this channel. That is an autocratic dictatorship. If you don't want to hear it on your YouTube channel, you don't want to read it on your YouTube channel, you can get rid of them just like that. But how do you get rid of somebody in real life who's doing that? There is no hide user on this channel button. When Robert Warnick wants to chase me in his vehicle down the street and pull out right out here outside of this very same house, this is the house that I fled to. And I had to walk while fleeing. I had to walk to the house with Robert Warnick following me. And what did the Dual County Sheriff's Department do? They covered for the crimes of Robert Warnick. Did they bother to go collect the evidence from Pump and Pantry? Did Robert Warnick even write down in that those situations where I was supposedly stalking him were situations where I was at Pump and Pantry? Did Robert Warnick say anything about that at all in that paperwork. No, he didn't. He omitted that, and by calling into question my sanity, they were able to prevent me from showing that evidence or even speaking up at my court dates. Now that one, what was it, yesterday? Today's the 5th, so yep, yesterday, that situation with Leslie Snell. Luckily, I was able to record it. Now that situation, all of those people worked together to prevent me from being able to show the evidence, to create a safety issue and make it a much larger safety issue and force me into a state of panic. I don't have anyone to go in with me in person. Now, do I have any doubts whatsoever as to whether or not cops followed my sister to Sydney? I'm fairly certain that happened. Was I there for it? No. But with their tactics of doing that to me, yes, it is very much a possibility and probability. Especially given the fact that they have intimidated so many people. What Leslie Snell did is a felony. And also, obviously, that judge was not going to allow any actual evidence. I had access to the recordings right then and there, and I wasn't allowed to play it. So it doesn't come down to the evidence. The evidence has nothing to do with it. It has to do with credibility. If you're a pretty white girl in Chapel, Nebraska, who works for the Dual County Sheriff, you are more credible than the victim, who is me. The judges are required to follow the law. And in this particular case, the judge did not follow the law. He intentionally, knowingly, and willingly ignored the law. And he showed loud and proud and very clearly that he was fine with all of it. For me, having to find someone to safely go in with me to the Dual County Sheriff's Department, I had to pay my sister $100 to show up. At the last minute, she wasn't able to show up. I offered her $100, and guess what? She showed up. That's right. Money. It came down to money. Now, this slander and these abuses by law enforcement nationwide, they're not just well documented by me. They are well documented by many people, including the bullying tactics. That's not okay, and it will never be okay. So, of course, I have to try to mind my P's and Q's as far as the way that I say things. Because although it is not illegal for me to speak out about Leslie Snell and the crimes that she has committed in order to prevent me from turning in the crimes that she committed and the Dual County Sheriff's Department committed, it's still legal for me to speak out about it. Now, I did have to look this up. The reason that I had to look this up is because people were trying to prevent me from speaking up in the situation with Danica Garner, who pulled the same thing. Rosa and Kelly, who pulled the same thing. They broke the law. They literally broke the law. This is not a tactic that is just specific to Dual County. Any officer does this. Obviously, by Rihanna's own testimony, and that is what I have to call it at this point, the conversations between me and Marianne Ingersoll show that she knew what she did was wrong. She was apologetic about it. But that's not what the police officers wanted to do. They wanted to assume that because she was a pretty white girl, that she must be right, and as me having a penis, I must be the bad guy. The reality of it is that I had made multiple phone calls about the assaults against those girls. Assaults that were committed by Rihanna Ingersoll. Now, by Joshua Rayborn's admission, and that's also on this YouTube channel, Joshua Rayborn clearly states that the reason that the state isn't going to give Amy those kids back is because she knew that Rihanna Ingersoll was an alcoholic and she dumped those kids off with Rihanna Ingersoll anyway. And Rihanna Ingersoll, she didn't want to get in trouble. So she was promising those girls, I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. Us girls got to stick together. Us girls got to stick together. Not okay. Not okay. Vic Vega made another one. Now let's take a picture of this because these stalkers do this often. They make multiple accounts to harass me. Now the difference between the accounts that I made and this guy is that this guy isn't going to give his real name. I didn't hide who I was. My picture, if you look at that Natalie Bollinger, her last public post, you will see that it is me. Me. I didn't put a mask over my face. I made sure that it was my face on there. It was my face on that account. When I made that video, it was my face there. Now that account was destroyed, and that's unfortunate because I no longer have access to that evidence. That evidence shows that I was trying to get help. That evidence shows that I was explaining to them that I was being treated like a fucking animal for something that never happened. And of course, I was never allowed to defend myself. Now we'll show this Vincent Vega's bullshit. There you go, Vincent Vega. He types, I bet Robert Warnick will piss on your grave when you're dead of natural causes after 20 more years of bitchy whining and 75,000 more videos. See, when it happens to a man, it's just bitchy whining, right? He just needs to man up and so on and so forth. Now, what do we do with this? What do we do with these people? We go over to the right-hand side to the three dots, and we hide user on this channel. That's right. If you're not going to be supportive, I got no problems with doing that little three dot thingy. No problems with it at all. Speaking out about corruption and corrupt officials, that is guaranteed by the First Amendment and by many laws since then. With people attempting to manipulate that process and going out of their way to deny me my legal rights by doing so, they are committing crimes. That includes this judge. These safety issues are long-standing. Now, by committing the crimes that Scott decoste has committed and his deputies to prevent me from turning them in, by trying to paint me as some sort of a monster, that is a major issue. Saying that it is a major issue is not a threat. It is a major issue. Corruption in the courts and corruption by law enforcement is a major issue. That is not a threat. That is a fact. intimidation by law enforcement, and false crimes, false reporting, this is a common tactic by them. The evidence is what needs to be seen. The evidence is what needs to be shown. Now, Mandy Singer spent a lot of time typing up the stuff in that video. A lot of time. But of course, with her not able to help, that never got sent in. I don't have a transcript of it. It's not that she didn't put in the effort, she absolutely did. It's the fact that she ended up overwhelmed and just never sent it. That's obviously not my fault. That's obviously not my decision, but it does affect my court case. It does affect my court date. With her being too scared to go in and talk to police in McCook because she didn't want to get targeted, and her unable to go with me to court on the 4th, like she was hoping to, that made it so I can't safely go there. Now, what am I to do about this corruption? Post it on the internet, that's right. Not just bitching, but showing actual evidence. Now, the body camera evidence is extremely important in all of these cases, and they have done everything to prevent me from having access to those body cams. Everything that they can to try to drag it out until the statute of limitations is over and when they're allowed to destroy the body cameras. Now, because I was incarcerated for 7 months, legally, I have 7 extra months to turn it in. 7 extra months, in addition to the fact they unlawfully had me incarcerated. Unlawful imprisonment is a crime. And then there's the assaults committed against me while I was in the prison and in the jails. These are common tactics nationwide. The people that you see where there's the body cameras of these officers committing these crimes, that's because, first of all, somebody went in with them and assisted them. And they probably had the money for a lawyer, or an organization such as a news agency paid for those body cameras. That's right, paid for them. Money, 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 money. They're preying on poverty. Now, I'd say maybe 5 to 10% of the black people who are victimized by law enforcement in this country, 5 to 10% of them, it's possibly racism. But the other 90% is based on poverty or assumed poverty or primarily assumed homelessness. Who do I have to go to for help for the crimes committed against me? Is BLM going to pick up my case? That's something that Anna Alford wanted to suggest. BLM. BLM doesn't care about me. I'm not the right color for them to care about. So who does that leave me? The Aryan Brotherhood? The KKK? Look at me. I'm too Hebrew for those organizations to care. And there's the fact that they're hate groups with a long history of harm against people like me, and a long history of harm against those who I stand up for and fight for the rights of, including the LGBT community, including minorities, including, yes, I'm going to say this, women. The Aryan Brotherhood and the KKK do have a history of abuse against women. At least many of their individuals within those groups have a long history of it. Can we blame the group for the acts of the individual? That depends. That depends on who it's socially acceptable to do that to. It's socially acceptable to blame all men, especially all white men. But it's not socially acceptable to blame a woman for something that she in specific did. It is not socially acceptable to hold a woman accountable for assaulting her husband. It's not socially acceptable. People will make every excuse. Oh, well, she must have been battered. She must have been abused. He must have been hitting her. The assumption that women don't get violent. You know what? In most of these situations, it is women who initiated the violence. And that has been shown statistically. But then we have to add the sexist feminist touch. Well, these women were only assaulting other women because they were assaulted first. Well, hold on a second. That's a double standard, isn't it? It's against the law for me to speak out about abuse. It's against the law for me to threaten people who threatened me. But it's not illegal for them to threaten me to begin with. But it's okay for a woman to pull that stuff. This is blatant sexism. These are bias-based crimes being committed by the courts. Bias-based crimes. Leslie Snell was afraid of going to prison. Sorry, she was afraid of going to jail. What she was attempting to do is only a misdemeanor. Now, what she has done since then are felonies. Yay, hooray. But look at the tactics that they've used and utilized to prevent me from turning them in. And then I'm not allowed to be frustrated about it. And I'm not allowed to say that killing people is wrong. Now, when folks want to say that they would physically manhandle somebody, that's the nice way of putting it, on my behalf, I don't want that either. I don't want somebody else to, I'm not going to pull the woman tactics that we teach in this country. I'm not going to have somebody else commit crimes for me. I'm not going to do that. Now, obviously, I did not understand any of the stuff that they were pulling in that court date. Their legal jargon in that is very difficult to understand. Matter of fact, when I look up the laws, I basically have to look up the layman's version after reading the laws because it is so horribly written. And then there's the fact that legal jargon, regardless of what the Webster's version of the dictionary says, regardless of those definitions, the legal definitions of many of these terms and words is completely different. The definition of mentally ill for somebody who is a therapist is entirely different than the legal definition of mentally ill. In the legal definitions, basically anybody who is called mentally ill is assumed to be a violent schizophrenic who doesn't know up from down, left from right, or the color of their own shit. So when they ask a therapist, is this person mentally ill? Well, the therapist needs to bring up the specific diagnoses. But if you're incarcerated, you can't even get a hold of those people if you're broke. Your public pretender isn't going to make any goddamn effort to get a hold of them. And of course, you're incarcerated, so you can't record any of it. This allows them to do it to you again and again and again and again. Now you can see in all of the paperwork that I filled out that the officers had a counter to everything. They had some bullshit excuse that I hadn't written it down properly. I hadn't put the proper date on it. I didn't put the time on it. And much of this, there was no room for it. But the fact that it coincides with abuse by the officers in the jails and in the prison, that's a very messed up situation. Because again, without those audio recording devices, they can do whatever they want, they can say whatever they want, and they can bribe inmates. A lot of those inmates are in lockdown for quite a few hours. Now, they spend less time in lockdown if they're allowed the privilege of mopping the floors. That's a privilege. These guys don't want to spend all that time in their cells. Obviously, they're going to pick up that privilege so that they're not stuck in that tiny ass cell. And when staff give you that privilege so that you can go harass an inmate, that again becomes a major issue. Like I said from the beginning, they're going out of their way to prevent me from having access to not only their body cameras, but my physical evidence and my recorded evidence, and prevent them from being in court. This safety issue has been ongoing since 2018. I have half of a recording from a body camera from Dual County Sheriff's Department with Dual County Deputy Jordan Anderson. And what happened with Jordan Anderson? He was allowed to move along. Scott decoste intentionally misled the situation with Jared Hahn. He is now a city council member. They have too much power. These things need to be recorded. If you want to stop these cops from murdering black people and getting away with it, push the body camera laws. Look at how much Boulder is paid out over their tactics. Look how much. 3.2 million for Mr. Franco, 98,000 for Sammy Leon Lawrence IV, 125,000 for Zaid Atkinson. Now you can see there, that is a very wide margin. Seth Franco was a white man, and Sammy Leon Lawrence IV was a dark man, and same with Zaid Atkinson, also dark. They didn't get paid nearly as much. They were falsely arrested, and Sammy Leon Lawrence IV was assaulted by the very same officer that I had been trying to turn in before he ever assaulted those people. And when I say those people, I'm not referring to black people, because Waylon Lolatai didn't target just black people. Waylon Lolatai is darker skin colored than Sammy Leon Lawrence IV. He is the one carrying the shotgun in the video with Zaid Atkinson. He is darker than Zaid Atkinson. He is darker than Michelle Rodriguez, who he also assaulted. He is obviously darker than me. But you see that although Seth Franco was just illegally arrested, Sammy Leon Lawrence IV was assaulted, and he only got less than 1/32 of the amount of money that Seth Franco's family was awarded. That's right, Seth Franco is dead. Yeah, he was not killed by Boulder Police Department. He committed suicide. We're at almost 2 hours, so I'm going to end this video. Good luck to you all. Keep speaking out if that's what you do. If you don't have the intestinal fortitude to speak out, well, you're the reason that this country is the way that it is.